Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, February 28th meeting of the Select Board. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order with the start of roll call attendance.
Daniel Ayer, 334 Old Concord Turnpike.
Dan Mantrack, 353 Con Road.
George Bailey, Chesley Drive.
Jim Sakosha, 21 James Henry Drive.
And Andrew Knapp, 96 Lindsay Point Road. If everyone would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the agenda for review and approval. Does anyone have anything they would like to add to the agenda from the Select Board? Select Person Ayer?
Yeah, I didn't get a proper notice on the review of the policy change for comp time and stuff, and I feel I need more time to review all of it. There's a future impact on the budget, I believe, and I think it entails more money. I don't know, I didn't have enough time to review it, so I can't vote on that tonight.
Okay. Select Person Bailey?
Yes, does that include appointments section, Mr. Chairman?
Well, the appointments there, that would not be part of our consent agenda. It's just, this is just the agenda as a whole.
Okay, thank you, sir. Nothing.
Is there anything anyone wants to add or delete? Select Person Ayer has made his request, which my belief is we leave on the agenda for discussion at that time. And then if, knowing that everyone has received it later in the process, but we may discuss it this evening and then we can go from there.
Understood. So appointments are going to be held separate. It's nothing we're deciding now.
Correct.
Thank you.
So as an addition under new business, we'll discuss it and the select board will decide at that time.
Yes, we can determine at that point, although I do note it is not listed on the appointments or under new business.
Right, no, that's what I was saying. Yeah, so.
We can discuss it and then determine if we want to take action at that time. So vote to approve the agenda as drafted with the additional note to discuss the policy change under new business.
Second.
Okay, so you're motioning then.
I'll make the motion.
I think you got a second over here.
Seconded from Select Person Mantrack. All vote.
Yeah, right.
Mantrack, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Sakosha.
Nap aye. This time I will open the first of two public comments.
So 2 public comments in a select board meeting. This is just general public comment. Anything you want to talk to the select board about? There'll be a public hearing immediately following this public comment specific to the topic of the acceptance of Overlook Circle. So you're certainly welcome to talk about that now, but if you want to talk about that, the more appropriate time would be during that public hearing. And if there's anybody participating virtually who'd like to make a comment during this first public comment of the evening, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. You might press *6 if you're on the phone to unmute yourself. Minute for anybody virtual or anybody. It's just a new participant. Last call for anybody participating virtually that would like to make a comment during public comment. Be another public comment session at the end of the meeting. Towards the end of the meeting.
All right, at this time I'll close public comment. We will start the public hearing for the acceptance of Overlook Circle pursuant to RSA 674:40-A. Select Person Ayer.
I might excuse myself, I have a conflict with the board thing.
You have a conflict with Du Bois and King. Okay. So, Connor?
Yeah, do you want any, obviously the select board, this has been a topic the select board's reviewed multiple times over the past couple of years. Do you want any sort of summary or obviously you have the materials in your packet as well? I'm happy to answer any questions or provide a brief summary for the board's preferences.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I know I don't need any brief on it. We've had a lot of discussion. We've had engineering reports done over the years. This has been reviewed, and the concern is, and Connor, will you refresh my memory and the board's memory on the policy for acceptance of town roads, or in the audiences?
Yeah,
they're
absolutely.
aware?
So there's a letter in your packet, and anybody participating in the audience or at home, the agenda, town administrator report are available on the town's website. All the documents we're reviewing are all available there as well, so you can review them if you'd like. So there's a letter that we sent at the select board's direction to the residents of Overlook Circle, give them notice of this hearing, and also explain some of the process that the town has gone through since this project received subdivision approval through the planning board. So part of that is references the select board statutory authority to accept roads. So that statutory reference is in the letter, as well as the town meeting warrant article, which authorized the select board to exercise that statutory. So won't get too much into the weeds, but in a general sense, the state law allows municipalities to make decisions. In certain cases, that by default is the legislative body, which is town meeting vote. In some cases, the legislative body can delegate to the governing body, which is the select board. In this case, the legislative body in 1994 delegated that authority to the select board. And in that warrant article, they said that in their discretion, the dedication of any street shown on the subdivision plan, which has been determined to serve a public purpose, approved by the planning board, provided that such street has been constructed to applicable town specifications as determined by the Board of Selectmen or their board. And so beyond the regular statutory language, the select board is further constrained by the language that town meeting used to delegate their authority in the consideration of acceptance of roads. And so further referenced in this letter is the report that the select board commissioned from Hoyle and Tanner with borings performed by SW Cole that established concerns that the road was constructed to the town specifications, most specifically the sub-base material, but also concerns with paving and other items. And so that's the information that has been gathered over the past couple of years, and staff submits to the select board in support of their decision making tonight.
Other questions,
My
comments,
questions
concern
were
from the
answered.
board? Hearing none. At this time, I'll open the public comment section of the public hearing for anyone who would like to participate that way. If you would, please either raise your hand or come on up to the microphone. Yes, sir,
Please.
please. And then start by stating your name and where you live in town.
Hi, my name is Mike Brooks. I live at 31 Old Circle, road in question. I mean, I know it's not a two-way conversation. I've been through a few of these. So a little background on myself. I've actually been clerical works on capital projects for 10 years. A couple years ago, I took on a facilities director job. I understand the process of this whole thing. I understand the literature that's in here. I'm a little confused, and with a little right to know questions later, I can get some more information on this. I see there's a third-party engineer that was requested to be hired, which is the world I lived in. And by looking at that, I don't know how we got to the point of the third layer, you know, first, second, third, before we have a complaint really filed. When I'm seeing the first third-party engineer followed by the placement, was when the complaint came up, was on the placement of the first layer, wear layer. But with the reports, I'm seeing deficiencies in the sub base and the lack of crushed gravel on the top 6 inches. I just don't know how we got to that point to put the burden on whatever it is, in this case, neighborhood or private road owner to we just, to this point, we're putting down a layer and then complaining about stuff that's been done so many years ago. We just learned about this Wednesday. We lost the ammo at all for anybody in the neighborhood to have helped or put up a flag or done anything besides just being passed down something. So that's just really my concern in closing. It's just, it's unacceptable. The process is very simple. State spec's a state spec. Samples are given. Approvals had been done. I don't see them in here. Somewhere along, here's the gravel, must have been approved. Why is it crushed stone? I don't know. Then we put pavement on top of it, and then we don't want to accept it. So I'm at a loss for a process that's missed. I know there's a lot of private roads in town, but how many are paved? I don't really know about that. I'd have to guess we are not a whole lot paved private roads, but anyhow, that's all I really have to say. There'll be some right to know, just so I can have some more information on this, how we got here. This is a great layout, and I appreciate you guys letting us know now.
Yep.
But
all the excuse me, all the information for it is public and available. And we've tried to really make sure that we've been really transparent. Is we started digging into this process, 2 years ago, I think is when it all really.
yeah, it's just, I was the third person in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
I've seen the process go through.
Yep.
I didn't see any complaints. I mean, hey, neighborhood, we're having a little bit of trouble with the developer. I didn't see anything from the town on this. And when you hold the card to decline something at the end, it's a little bit hard for a neighborhood to accept or swallow the fact that you're not going to accept them at the end. Hey, maybe we could have, instead of us the other way, helped in the situation. It's just what I had done. I was the one determining that before. Bring it to the owners, towns, city of Dover, University of New Hampshire, guys, this is not right. You can't proceed. So I missed in there, but anyhow, third-party engineer was hired for a reason. I really don't know what the purpose of it was. If you look at this, if you're just going to talk in the end, it's not the point of a third-party engineer.
If you'd like, Mr. Chair, make a couple of comments to address some of the points that
Absolutely.
can be handled this. I think that's great feedback. Certainly really appreciate it. And especially from your experience. So a couple of points. The third-party engineer on this project was Du Bois and King. Hoyle and Tanner is somebody that the select board hired separately after a concern was raised by Du Bois and King, like you mentioned, at the end of the
During
project.
construction, though?
Du Bois and King was the engineer, the third-party engineer during construction.
It was in
And-
their construction report.
Yeah. And so, but you make an excellent point that there were certain things that we're aware of now, which you would hope in an arrangement like that would be caught earlier on. And absolutely, part of the constraints with the community the size of Barrington is we rely on expert consultants outside of the town of Barrington.
Sure.
And in this case, the engineer. So, the town and town staff relied on the expert recommendations of a third-party engineer reviewing the project. And so that third-party engineer in the end phases of construction of the road identified and raised concern to the town's attention that the pavement wasn't, the outside ambient temperature, the surface temperature was too cold and the pavement wasn't thick enough. And so that's what started the process for the town to say, hey, well, we want to trust but verify. We want to understand if that's actually the case. And the select board at that point recognized that, hey, look, to your point of there's a lot at stake here. There's 20 residents live up there and they all bought houses thinking the town's going to take over the road.
Sure.
So we need to look into this. And the town, spent a fair amount of money investigating, requested to take borings, which were taken, with the primary goal of, hey, trust but verify this pavement thickness, pavement temperature situation. And obviously the information collected at that point drew our attention to other concerns like the subbase, which we were previously unconcerned about or didn't have, substantiated concerns about. And so it's an unfortunate situation all in all, because I think to your point, if the town had those concerns or
Engineers, I'm not really pointing at town. Town does
No.
what I mean, same as myself, I'm clerk of the works.
right,
So they hire someone like me to watch that.
right,
In this case, you hired an engineer and you trust the engineers. Engineers are good and bad, the way you go.
right. So I think that's good feedback, and it's unfortunate that the town wasn't specifically aware enough actionable about the subbase earlier on in the process, and not completely separate, but the town made the decision around that time that it was time for a new third-party engineer, somebody to work with the highway department and with planning and land use, and that doesn't change anything in the past or anything that we would have hoped would have been caught earlier and wasn't. But it's a step the town could take.
Yeah.
I appreciate the feedback.
Point why someone paid money for that engineer. So I point my deficiency to an engineer that was hired to do a job who could have raised flags for you to help the town understand what was going on there. I mean, not to have 6 inches of gravel before we put pavement, that's like, you know, a visual. Anybody could have went out and actually looked at that. Anybody could have. I didn't need an engineer for that. It was that gray, that tan crushed heavy gravel was what was on that road on basically granite, because they had pretty much blast most of the road to get it in. But that's all I got to say. I mean, there's some neighbors behind me. We're just a little stuck with it. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Additional public comment?
Somebody virtually would like to make a comment. Jason Dennis, who actually reached out to me today. I'll let him say, but I believe he's an attorney that represents some or most of the residents on Overlook Circle.
We need you to unmute yourself, sir.
You'd think after all this time, we'd do that automatically every time, just right, but nope. Anyway, so can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
So Connor is correct. I am an attorney. I practice out of Hastings Law Office. Believe it or not, in Freiburg, Maine. We are a multi-state office. We're about a mile across the border from Conway. So we're not geographically in your neck of the woods, but I have personally had some involvement with legal issues at this road before. And I do represent some of the homeowners on Overlook Circle. And so I am sort of I am in attendance tonight, I guess sort of, since it's remote, to speak on their behalf. A couple points that I will make with regards to the decision to accept or not accept this road as a town road. And obviously I can answer any questions that anybody may have, but I do want to make a couple sort of, and I apologize, legal points. I think Mike Brooks is the name I heard, had made some factual statements that actually are a good segue into one of the legal points that I would like to make, which is in New Hampshire, yeah, town roads are a funny thing. There's a few different ways they can be sort of laid out and accepted. Connor had indicated this in his sort of briefing to you all at the beginning, that the legislative body, which is the residents of the town, can vote to accept the road. The governing body, the select board, can do that as well. And that's obviously what we're here tonight for. There is a funky aspect of town road acceptance, which is if the town itself doesn't do it, the petitioners can move on to Superior Court. And why law does what it does sometimes and uses the words that it does and becomes to mean certain things, I don't know. But the magical word for laying out a road is whether there is a, quote, occasion to do so. And that comes out of, I hate to get into the weeds, but statute RSA 231-8. And so after going before the town, property owners can petition the Superior Court to do the, essentially make the same decision. And if they do so, there's the standard that the Superior Court applies is a balancing test, which is a two-part test. And first, which actually doesn't apply here, is to determine whether the town's interest in taking somebody's land is a strong enough interest against the private property owner. But this road is already there. So you move on to the second prong, which is to balance the public interest, which obviously the residents on this road are members of the Barrington public, versus any burden to the town. And this is where I get into the points that Mike made. When it comes to the issue of burden to the town, what is not weighed in the legal analysis, and I obviously can give you guys legal citations if you want them, and whether you need to have a legal consultation later on it. I don't want you to take my word for it. I'm just presenting this obviously in the interests of my clients. But what is not taken into account is any issues or errors or lapses or negligence, so to speak, that may have been on the part of the town. And I recognize that as I say that, it almost inherently sounds as if I am accusing the town of doing something wrong or negligent. And at the end of the day, there may be a number of people that would say that is the case. And I think what I heard from Mr. Brooks is he might be on that bandwagon. But it doesn't have to really be exactly that. In this particular case, as Mike said, the town had hired a third-party engineer who was acting as the town's agent. And so the engineer is standing in the shoes of the town for determining the quality and conditions and standard of this road, and indicated that there were no issues, at least at the beginning. And so in the analysis of balancing the benefit to the public, which is 20 tax-paying homeowners, obviously there's about 92 to 9,500, at least the best I can determine, residents in the town of Barrington. But this is a road that connects to 2 public roads. It does connect to 1 non-public road, which actually showed up at least in 2004 as one of the problem roads in town on the strategic report with regard to transportation. And so having 2 back-to-back might not be ideal, to have 2 potentially problem private roads. But in any event, the point here is, for me, that when we balance the interests, and perhaps some of the folks on the road will speak to whether they need to get their kids to school and travel and their needs, et cetera. But if we're balancing their interests, this is a road that I think we may also hear. I don't know if Cliff is in the audience or remotely attending, Cliff Williams. My understanding, I don't represent him, my understanding is that he fully expected in his communications with the town that if this met the standards, which he was told they did, that this would be accepted as a town road, which leads into my second argument, which I will just very quickly lay out, which is the estoppel argument, meaning if a municipal entity tells you that you can or can't or won't get in trouble for something, generally speaking, the individual who's been told that at least has the legal argument to say, okay, you have to stick by that. You can't change what you've told me. And so, again, this is fact dependent upon what Cliff Averill, if he's here, will say. But if he was told this will be a town road if you meet specs, and has been told by the engineer, the first one, that it meets specs, the argument that he would specifically have is that you can't tell me something different now. And so those are really the 2 arguments. One is that under the occasion test, the balance here should be in favor of the residents who've expected a public road ever since they moved in there. And really the burden to the town would be the cost, which looks like, I guess, if the town wanted to fix it, would be the $315,000 or the $200,000 number in the Hoyle and Tanner report. And so that is, oh, sorry, go ahead. Was somebody? Oh, sorry. So that, of course, would be the burden. The other burden that can sometimes be considered is increase for need on the town because of development. However, since this is already a subdivision that exists, that burden doesn't really get considered legally because it's already been taken into account. No more fire or emergency services or school will be needed because everybody's already on the road, unless there's one lot that might still be able to be developed. So the burden is the cost to the town for maintenance versus the public interest of having a road maintained by the town to get to and from work and get their kids to and from school, et cetera. So I'm happy to ask any questions, but my position legally, of course, on behalf of my clients, is that given the balancing test that I've just laid out, and also given the estoppel issue, dependent upon what Mr. Williams says, that the road needs to be accepted. And so, yes, these generally have a layer of discretion, but there are certainly times when that discretion cedes to other things. And I believe we have 2 such bases in this case. So I can answer any questions, as I've said now probably 3 times, but I will otherwise be quiet and let maybe some of the residents on the road address their individual concerns and interests.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you very much. My question, if you will go through and ask Connor, do we have a listing of this gentleman's clients that he's representing during this here, so we can have it for the record?
I do not, but I'm sure he would provide it if asked.
I can do that.
Thank you.
That's what I have for starters. Thank you.
Mr. Mantrek, did you have something?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind,
Yeah, if I may start.
please.
Just in response to Mr. Dennis's comments, with him stating that there are two positions, one, from my standpoint, it's hearsay at this point because I have no record of any of that and I have nothing that documents it. And secondly, we have a road that somebody said would meet town standard, but does not meet town standard. So I'm a little hard pressed to accept that 9,500 people have to bear the burden that I understand does impact people in this room, 20 people to be, or 20 homes to be precise, but have not been built to the standards that we have to accept. And we have private roads all over town that we haven't accepted and probably will never accept based on that.
So I think the point I wanted to make, and Attorney Dennis, we talked today, and he followed up with an email shortly before the meeting, and referenced what the points that he was hoping to make with the select board. And I think part of how Barrington, the situation Barrington is a little bit different than how Attorney Dennis has described it, is the town hasn't, through the entire process, through its agent or as the town, said this road is fine. And very specifically, the reason that we are where we are today with the information that we have is because towards the end of the process, as Mr. Brooks mentioned, the town's engineer raised concerns to the town and said, hey, you have a specification of pavement thickness. There's state specifications that say if the pavement temperature is this temperature, then it has to be thicker. And immediately the developer raised concerns with that objection by the engineer, which is why the select board said we want to trust but verify. We want to understand. And so that was far before the town didn't go through this whole process and say everything is good, everything is rosy, we intend to accept this road. And the reason we've gone through the process that we did is because the exact opposite is true. That wasn't the case. And I understand Attorney Dennis's point, maybe as it relates to the subbase, that, hey, if there's something that the town engineer said that the subbase met specification or made a mistake, but told the developer that it was okay. But that isn't the only problem with the road. And I've talked to 8 of the residents of Overlook Circle, and without exception, everybody I talked to started out with, we know there's problems with the roads. There's problems with our driveways. There's problems with our houses. And so the problems with the road extend beyond the road base. And additionally, in the memo from Hoyle and Tanner, it indicates that the pavement thickness is not uniform, which is likely a cause of the substandard road base, because if you don't have good structural base for the paver, then the paver is going to be coming through there, and you're going to end up with ruts and uneven thickness of pavement. And so there are areas where the base material of pavement wasn't thick enough, the top coat wasn't thick enough. There's instances where it didn't meet the full 3 inches. And so, I think for that specific reason, nobody was told that the road met specifications and would be taken over. And it was later on in the process with the pavement that counterpoint came up. But that's what the select board has been chasing, and really on behalf of the residents of Overlook Circle, because the town, the select board felt the duty to do right by the residents of Overlook Circle, and make sure to make the most informed decision that they could.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it took a long time to even get the developer to agree to let us conduct those boring samples.
Correct. Yep.
Or to let our third-party engineer that came in and did it afterward do those boring samples.
Right.
Even after there was pressure to say, hey, we want you to take this road, and we pushed back and said, no, we need to follow through on that more.
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
I know Mr. Dennis has his hand up again to speak. Is there anyone else that would like to comment before I go through the second round on this? Sir, if you would please come on up.
I'm Clifford Williams, member manager of Ian James LLC. I'd like to echo through you, Mr. Chairman, to the attorney that I was told that it did meet spec. The only thing that was in question was the wear course. And that was taken care of immediately when I spoke with Eric Thibodeau, the head of the DOT paving chief. At no time did it not meet these temperature specs that really didn't exist, but I'm not going to get into that. All third parties went through everything from testing of the select to inspecting of the road, and it all met the standard. I have that in an email from Du Bois and King saying that everything was done except for he questioned the top coat. Like I said, we've verified that since then. As far as not allowing you to bore the road, I tried to communicate with the Board of Selectmen and town administration for quite some time and was, I don't know what term you want to use, ghosted. The town's attorney was less than helpful in this process at the beginning and at the end. So all I can say is we met or exceeded all the specs. And if anybody knows anything about road construction, that road, if it had a problem, it would have revealed itself by now. It's been 2 years. It's one of the nicest roads in town. Thank you.
In the select board's packet, you have a letter from an attorney representing Mr. Williams, which makes those points. And one of the points about the specifications for that was used by the engineer for the pavement. I think the town's concern with the pavement is summarized best with the results of the so we had concerns raised by the third-party engineer. But the boring samples are summarized in the report from Hoyle and Tanner that don't support that they meet the specifications even that were referenced by Attorney Steiner as far as the inconsistency of the base and the top coat and the overall thickness. And they also reference concerns with compaction, which they said is generally a result of being placed in cold temperatures. So I think that the select board, instead of relying on the initial concern from Du Bois and King, I would encourage the board to consider the information collected by Hoyle and Tanner, which represents actual conditions and not the conditions that Du Bois and King had concern over.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into this, but one of the conditions was that we had to be at the boring and I had to bring a representative of my own, and we were never notified. We didn't get to go there for the boring, and that was one of the conditions in which I was going to allow you to bore the road. Because now there's 8 holes in a perfectly good road, and regardless of whether you take the road or don't take the road, that has to be fixed. I never did get any measurements from your third-party engineer for the thickness of the road. Like I said, it met or exceeded specs, and that's all I can tell you.
Mr. Dennis?
Sure, thank you. So I was going to make those points that Cliff made because I see the packet from Attorney Jim Steiner in which he was told the only item to be completed would be the gravel pit. And then I do see the requests about setting up the boring, and Attorney Steiner was essentially told, I have no idea when this can happen. The town's going to have to recontact the company that it was going to do the boring and see how busy they are. And so that's
Thank you for your comment.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if that was in a question there. So couple other points. Well, maybe really just one. There's a case out of Wolfboro where some bonds were released and the town said, well, there's going to be some expense here to deal with the road. And the court ultimately in that case said, well, you released the bond. You don't get to count that in your decision making that it's going to be a burden to the town. And so whether the bonds in this case were released or they were allowed to be released, either A, that would mean the town gave up the money before the job was done, or the decision rendered by a court that the bonds were allowed to be released would be that means it's because that criteria was satisfied. It can really, in my opinion, can be only one or the other. The criteria was satisfied or it wasn't, but the money was given away anyway. So with regards to those temperature type conditions and everything else other than base and subbase, I think that issue does not get to be weighed in the town's favor based on this Wolfboro case out of 2001. And then again, with regards to the gravel, that issue was checked off by the town's agent. So the town said through its agent, this is fine. And come to find out later that there's an apparent issue. And so that to me is what brings in the estoppel issue. If you hire somebody and they are paid to do work for you and they speak for you, people are allowed to rely on them. You know, 20 plus people have. And so again, I understand that there is now significant concern on the town's behalf with this road based on the whole Hoyle and Tanner report. But Cliff has just said those concerns were never raised before. And so if they weren't raised before and now they're being raised at this very stage, I think that if we are before the Superior Court, those factors will not be put on the town side of the scales when it does the balancing. And so my perspective is, I guess from an efficiency standpoint, the decision based on those factors might as well simply be made today. And the last thing I would simply say is that this can be done on a conditional basis. The town has the ability to make a conditional acceptance of the road, meaning if the town does feel there are issues, it can conditionally accept the road such that those issues can be addressed. You've heard from Cliff that there really aren't any, but I imagine it would make much more sense for the town to simply say, no way, never, no how, for there to be a conditional acceptance as opposed to that decision for the folks that live on the road. Thank you.
Connor, you want to speak to a couple of his points specifically with the regard to some of the sampling? There was another point that he had made that when I was leaning over and talking with you about it, but I didn't write a note on it. My brain is
Yes.
fogged after a whole day in the office.
So, I mean, I think the unfortunate position that the select board is in is that the select board is tasked with determining, accepting a road that's going to be the responsibility of all residents in town.
Right.
And, you know, we've dug into the weeds about, you know, third-party review and the, you know, bonds and releasing the bonds and everything like that. But
That was the
at
piece.
the end of the day, the contractor has a duty to build the road, build the subdivision as approved. And, you know, we don't burden a developer with having a third-party engineer at the site 24/7. And, you know, this board has talked about that before, even with our own bridge projects, that they're not inspecting, they're observing. And that, you know, that model is a matter of efficiency for the contractor, right? We don't want to require them to pay somebody to be there 20 hours a week while they're building. But anyways, to the point of the bond, and I had a chance to review some of, you know, some of what Attorney Dennis sent over, and the town didn't simply release the bond. The town attempted to call the bond for the pavement thickness. And that's part of, you know, part of the information we were looking to collect with the borings was to trust but verify and have that information to identify that there were real concerns with the pavement thickness, which is what Hoyle and Tanner found with the borings. And so the town didn't simply, through the whole process, like in the Wolfboro case, the town didn't simply say yes, yes, yes the whole way and then wait for the road to be asked to be accepted and said, oh no, we have all of these concerns. We were still much in the process. We were still in, albeit the final stages of the process, but when concerns were raised, and there was still a bond in place that the select board worked diligently to call. So.
Right. Because I remember that, and I remember the follow-up on it that if I remember correctly, we couldn't call the bond on it at that point, or there was something.
Yeah,
that-
so we were unsuccessful. The competing argument was more successful, and, you know, I think it makes sense, but the select board didn't just forfeit the bond.
So, okay. Is there any other public comments? Hearing none at this time, I'll close the public comment section. Is there a motion from the board to accept Overlook Circle or not?
Could I make a point? I wasn't on the board at the time much of this went through, but it seems to me, I don't think it's that we don't want to accept a road as a town road for the citizens who live there. But the very big concern is that it seems, at least to some of the information we have, that this is not a road that is built to our standards and that there's potential for that falling apart. I would think that we would be willing to conditionally accept this if we ever brought it up to, if the road met our standards.
Which would be done by them going back, correcting the road, and then coming back before the board. I would never want to put us in a position, or the residents of the town in a position of saying we conditionally accept something, because what it does is it says, yeah, you want to take it on. Our goal is not to, or should be, not to saddle the residents with an acceptance of something that does not meet it and ends up getting dragged out for years and pulls the town into it by conditionally accepting it. I would never put us in that position. That's a really slippery slope, and I would advise against doing that. Select Person Bailey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have, just for your information, Connors, I've been reading on this to try to increase my knowledge on all of this. And one of the things I came across during my readings was the fact that this road has to meet DOT standards to allow school buses to transit the road. And right now, with some of the issues that we have, some of the letters we have, the information, it shows that it's questionable. I am not qualified to make a determination. I'm just saying, to me, it's questionable that DOT would accept that part of it to allow the school buses to transit. So that's just a point of interest I threw in there after I was doing my reading. Thank you.
Well, we got the drawings, and that shows what's there and what's not there. You know, and I don't think another person being there or pick another spot to do another boring, but, you know, it's not up to specs.
I mean, one thing that stands out to me is when I were looking at this, if you look at the length of that road, it's a pretty decent circle. The fact that you could do 8 borings and find multiple samples that don't meet the specification tells me it's not an anomaly. It is a systematic problem. You know,
It's consistent.
you know, I know even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while, but that is not the routine that you should find in it. So I'll make the motion to not accept Overlook Circle at this time. Seconded by Select Person Bailey was up first.
Yep, that's fine.
Longer hand.
Roll call vote.
Let the vote note that Mr. Ayers has
Abstained.
abstained, yeah.
I'll vote aye on that motion.
Bailey, aye.
Sakosha,
Nap aye. Apologize to the residents here. I'm sorry you folks have to suffer through that, but that's unfortunately something that has to be worked out with your developer. So, thank you for your time.
Motion to close the public hearing.
He closed it
I'll
previously.
close the public hearing.
Briefly, for anybody that's on this meeting.
Sir, excuse me,
Sir,
public
sir.
hearing is closed.
Can I address my clients?
You can, but not in this forum, sir. The public hearing is closed. It's not an open forum for discussion.
No, it was just gonna tell
No,
them.
sir, point of order, it is not open for discussion.
Wasn't
If you want to
discussion. Thank you.
discuss it, you can take it up with your clients outside of here and everyone who wants to collectively work within the association.
Okay, the Zoom is set up for that, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a consent agenda, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move we.
It's A through G, amendments needed.
No amendments.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call vote.
I brought my issues before, is that part of it?
That's not part of the consent agenda. The consent agenda are the meeting minutes, the previously signed items for signature, new requests for signature,
All
the
right.
personnel policy, recreation holidays, radio licensing appropriation, the 2022 peeper closure request, and the transfer station metal container agreement. Are there any of those items that you would like to actually discuss? Or the radio licensing appropriation?
No.
Okay, I'm happy to see, just under general comment on that we're looking to move with a metals container and actually start making some revenue on that.
That's awesome.
Uh, I'm also happy to see the peeper coming back and the radio licensing appropriation, something we need to do for our police and fire department. So
Yep.
roll call vote.
Here, I.
And Manshirk, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Sakosha.
Nap aye. Appointments. For tax collector, we have Linda Markowitz, who has been our tax collector now for how many years?
9 in
Yeah.
April.
I say, I know it's a run,
Mr. Chairman, may I?
longer than I've been here. Yes, you may.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion on, under appointments for A through E. And the reason I would like to do that is that I have no objection to the personnel, in my opinion, that are listed there to volunteer for the town. What I'm asking is that election is coming up on Tuesday, and I would think that we as a board would postpone the appointment of these individuals and allow the new individuals that are successfully elected on the 8th to have this on their first agenda, because it does exceed some cases here going past the 3 years. If you remember, I was informed when I made motions that it made the other board for more than 3 years for it. And that's all I'm asking to do, is just to consider and let the two electees, that whoever they may be, all of us sit down and vote on the 14th to decide whether or not we do that. That's just, that's a request. Okay.
Appreciate your request. So I firmly believe we should be voting on our tax collector and our town treasurer in this case. And the folks for the planning board, the transfer station, and the ZBA, it would be a first hearing anyway, so it wouldn't be a second vote. So the folks in
right,
front
too.
of the board would get,
Slap me down again, Mr. Chairman. There we go. Okay. And the tax collector, I noticed that she has April.
no, sorry, I thought you said
Linda
treasurer.
Markowitz was
Yep.
hired in April, so that's still, well, that would still go under the first and second appointment agenda, or just for those for the boards?
Just for those for the auxiliary boards.
Okay, all right, I'll stand down.
I
Thank
would
you.
like to make a motion to reappoint Linda as the Barrington tax collector with the term expiring in 2023.
Second.
Second,
Here, I.
Manshirk, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Okay. Sakosha.
Nap aye. Congratulations.
I'd like to make a motion to
Continuing.
appoint Peter Royce as the town treasurer.
Second.
Here, I.
Manshirk, aye.
Bailey, aye. Sorry, I'm sitting here waiting to put a check next.
Nap
to his
aye.
name.
So just so you know, I have reapplied to sit on the planning board.
Can't
You
quit
know,
it.
since I won't be reappointed before, I might not make a meeting in there, you know, have to wait and with bated breath to see if I can get reappointed for it.
Do you have a note from home saying it's okay for
Uh,
us to do it?
I
Permission slip.
did get my permission slip signed for it, so
I'm just being smart ass, sorry.
it's all good. So, everyone has the appointments for the planning board, the transfer station, and the ZBA. Is there anything anyone would like to discuss, any of those members, or anything that we would need to go into non-public on? Everyone should have their applications as well.
I have all.
Select person
I
Mantrek.
do have just a question.
Mhm.
How many empty, even with these volunteer, I know the transfer station we can fit in, but will there still be vacancies on any of these boards?
Yes,
ZBA.
the planning board and the ZBA have vacancies still.
Oh, I'm
Yep, so later in your packet, you
yeah.
have a document that's,
Sorry.
okay. Yep,
Sorry. I'm
So-
sorry.
Thanks for having us.
this document shows the current makeup and who's being proposed. So if the select board at this point were to appoint all of the candidates and alternates for the planning board, there would be a full board and one alternate vacancy.
Right.
With the zoning board, if the one member is appointed, there'd be a full member vacancy and two alternate member vacancies. Conservation Commission, we're waiting to hear back from some members about reappointments, same with Advisory Budget Committee. Recreation Commission, there are two alternates, although they do have somebody waiting in the wings. And then the Transfer Station Committee, we intend to have a specific recommendation for two full members and two alternate members with the four that have applied. One point to Chair Knapp's, what he mentioned. So there's a planning board meeting on March 1st, which Mr. Knapp would be eligible to attend and participate in. The next planning board meeting is March 15th. And so presumably, if the select board makes their appointment on March 14th, Mr. Knapp would know that he's been appointed and can participate in the meeting on the 15th. That said, there's to add some insurance to having a quorum, given that Mr. Knapp's been on the planning board. If you wanted to consider appointing him, I don't think
Box Connor.
that wouldn't be prudent. And then similarly with the zoning board, we did have one recent resignation. And so Tracy Hardigoff, former select board member and chair, has put in for that board. Similarly, it might not be a bad idea to consider waiving the policy of two meetings, simply because we have a meeting in the middle of March, and I wouldn't want to delay hearings for lack of a quorum. So just food for thought.
It'll be the third week on there.
Right, yep, so the 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to
Can I comment first?
approve appointments under C, D, and E. Make a blanket appointment for all the members listed.
We're not ready for D.
No, he's not ready.
D's not ready. And I wouldn't necessarily, I don't think we're in a lurch.
Withdraw my motion.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Select person Air.
I don't know, we have rules and procedures and stuff, and out of convenience and necessary, I don't think it's proper, we're gonna follow them, we're not. And if you want waiving things, where's the precedent for that?
Zoning board's not gonna meet till after election, so.
The planning board will be,
The day after.
Yeah,
oh,
they
right,
do.
and will be a little bit light in the interim, but I mean, everybody's still participating.
Listen, I think it's perfectly fine. And so I guess for the members that are here, I would urge you to not delay making those specific final appointments at the March 14th meeting. And with whoever's elected, I can make sure to bring them up to speed so they can make informed decisions as well.
That's assuming Knapp would be approved at that meeting.
If not, I can apply for the position on the zoning board, which would actually be better because it's only one meeting a month.
You could do both.
I mean, I really wanted to be on the transfer station committee, but it doesn't look like there's gonna be a slot for me.
A lot of people.
I don't know when anyone got
I got
so
a
into
room for
trash,
you.
but kind of always been my gig.
And I will point out that Mr. John Driscoll is with us in the audience tonight. He's one of your applicants for planning board. Somebody who we.
Do a dance for you guys or something.
Did you bring your accordion?
See, all my selectees didn't show up.
I'm here with you.
Mr. Driscoll has regularly watched the activities of select board and planning board. We joke that he's one of the 23 or 25 people that watches the YouTube recording.
Your sound system, my God.
So anyways,
Volunteer to replace it.
We were looking for
You're not
volunteers.
bringing this to the town hall.
oh, it'll be better. Yeah,
It'll be a
no,
much better system.
it'll be purpose built.
We can still blame Mr. Knapp.
All right,
Yeah.
So what are we gonna do?
you get 6 months to blame me after I'm gone. I think that's the official rule. I don't, well,
No actions
I don't
necessary.
think you need to do anything.
Yep,
It's
come
just discussion.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I guess the only question would be, does anyone have any objections to any of these people?
I don't have any
I
objections.
wouldn't either, including the last one, planning board.
So we've covered C, D, and E at this time. No actions to take. Item F, I would like to recognize the entire select board and especially Mr. Air for his 6 years of service to the town of Barrington. Thank you very much for your service.
And yours,
Thank you for your 6 years of dedication to the town, Andy, as well.
Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add in there or?
No, I absolutely, it's a lot of times a thankless job, the role of select board member. But our form of government, especially in New Hampshire, relies on people willing to step up and step into a very thankless role. And to think that both of you, Dan and Andy, have been willing to do that now for 2 terms is very commendable. And like I said, I think it's, a lot of gluttons for punishment, I guess. But like I said, it relies on people being willing to step up, be a part of the process. And absent of that, leaves a lot of folks wondering how decisions get made and why. And so certainly appreciate all the contributions both of you made to the town.
I appreciate you making it a little more thankless for me on my last meeting here tonight.
So
I have
what, on the 8th, what shift have you decided to work for your last election? Or have you decided to do that?
I always come in the evening, so,
Yeah.
you know, I like to be there in the end when it all goes
When it all
down.
goes to hell, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Staff reports.
Yes, we're here the second meeting in February, so I've already addressed my work anniversaries and I don't have anything else that isn't on the agenda or added to the agenda. Thank you.
Office Administrator Cop.
I have nothing to add tonight.
You're gonna have to get used to somebody else saying.
yeah.
Old business, 2022 town meeting, which is March 8th.
Yes.
Are there items for discussion other than when everybody would be working their slot?
That's the only thing, although I will, for the folks that are watching at home and are unaware. So town meeting, the ballot session is March 8th. Linked in the town administrator report is the town clerk's webpage about voting information, hours, requirements, things like that. Also sample ballots for both the town ballot, the zoning ballot, and the school ballot is available on the town's website, and absentee ballot requests. So the ballots are in, and so if you're eligible to apply to vote absentee, you can go to the town hall, fill out the application, and fill out your ballots right then. You're not voting when you do that. This isn't early voting. This is absentee ballot voting. So that vote won't be counted until the election, but that is available. And then, like you had mentioned, if all members would please communicate to the chair when they're available to be there at the polling place during town meeting, and then we'll fill in the gaps with pro tem appointments on the 8th, that Tuesday, the 8th.
So we have to cover the entire day, starting at 7 a.m.?
8 to
8 a.m.?
7 to 8.
7.
8 to 7. 8 to
8 to
7.
7. Yeah, it was like
Both numbers.
another way around. select person there?
Lost the numbers.
I usually do the night too, I can do the morning, first in the morning, I do the night.
So you're gonna do morning and evening? Is that what you're saying?
When I'm available. for the
Rockstar.
I can do 4 to 7 at night if necessary. If not, I can talk about changing it.
Okay,
And-
so,
Andy, I'm going to Oregon for my mother-in-law's memorial service this weekend. And I'm supposed to be back on Monday, but you know how the airlines work
You can appoint someone to be your designee.
and don't work. But I can be available practically any part of the day. I would prefer later because I'll be coming in at midnight on Monday at best. So I'll-
maybe noon to 4, maybe?
I'll do that. I'll stay till late too.
3-hour shifts or 4-hour shifts?
At your pleasure.
Try to do 4 typically, just so we have coverage. And I know middle of the day for me is tough. Tuesdays are when I have all my team meetings, so I am like lock, stock, start to end on Tuesdays.
Did the moderator allow food this year?
No,
I know.
I'll bring you donuts.
It's on the public record.
They'll probably have holes in them.
They will.
I will try and do the 8 to 12, but that's also tough being a fellow business owner, so.
Mm-hmm.
If I get in time, I'll come do that with you.
Okay.
I'll be there.
And Dan will be there.
So I have
Hey,
Dan.
me and Dan get to hang out one last hurrah.
You said it, not me.
Okay. And then
I heard you were gonna go
Bailey,
for
I'm sorry,
writing.
what was yours again?
Was me, who?
You were in 4 to close? Is that
4
what
to
you were?
close, yeah.
3 to close, something like that?
Yeah, I can get, 3 to close. I could do that too if you're necessary. If you get stuck somewhere else, I can change out, so.
Okay,
Supposed to be 3 people there.
yeah, so
You're gonna have
that,
to appoint designees.
Yep, so I'll take the list and I'll appoint ballot clerks as designees.
right, the big hiccup, it looks like, is kind of that noon to 3 window.
Okay.
Yeah. Assuming I get in Monday night, I'll do.
Thanь you.
Yeah.
Boston.
I appreciate that.
Right.
I'll get someone to.
The town hall update.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen, town hall's well under construction, been setting the trusses and look to get it closed in soon to prevent any additional setbacks with winter conditions. So Reno Construction maintains middle of July, substantial completion. Be able to start moving in and get everything moved over before the end of July, which is terrific when our lease expires at the current space. So in other news, not so positive news, the federal budget was kicked down the road again. I actually forget the new date, maybe April sometime. But they have continued with a continuing resolution for the federal budget, which is where the $1.5 million for Congressman Pappas's office is tied up. So that has never been guaranteed, and will continue to wait for it. But in the meantime, looking for authorization from the select board to begin the financing process of the $875,000 bond and reaffirm previous discussion to use ARPA funds to offset the need to bond the full amount of $875,000. So essentially, the financing process, we have an attorney, our bond counsel, which will finalize our authorization for issuing a bond, and we'll go through a process of selecting an issuer, likely a bank in this case because the amount's small enough, the bond bank, and there's limitations with the bond bank. And so I'd like to be prepared so that when the time comes, if we have to do that because either the money doesn't come through or we're still waiting for it, I want to be prepared to pull the trigger on that.
So I have
Make
a,
that motion.
hold on, hang on one second, if you
All
don't
right.
mind. I have a question on that. Because the idea of bonding it is lovely, but you don't really necessarily get the early payoff option on it if you wanted to take it.
That's the drawback with the bond bank, which is
Right.
why I think if I was going to guess, the best terms we would get would be with the bank, where we'd be able to pay off early. So the bond bank, will generally have better rates, but there are certain terms which I don't think are always favorable. One being you can't pay off early. You're stuck to that 20, 25, 30-year term.
And the reason I raise it with the board is, one, we're seeing interest rates go up, which means our money is not gonna go as far for us in that regard. And the second piece is if this money comes through from Congressman Pappas, potentially in April, I would much rather have the ability to use it, pay it off, and then whatever balance is accrued there, it allows us to keep the town move the town forward in a very positive and cash liquid position for any other future projects or funds that we need to start planning for as we do this. And we know there are several along the way. Select Person Air?
I agree with what you said, but I agree with the preparation, but just have it in case we need to. But I don't know, can we do a fixed rate? I'd look at the fine print.
Right, it's something to look at. Now,
Read it, make sure it's not something that's good to go on our site.
I mean, the plus side is when you look at 875,000 from a municipal end, this is a very small borrow in the grand scheme of it. And if you look at the median home value in the town of Barrington, it becomes even less of an issue since the average house in Barrington is now selling for over $450,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Person Air?
I hate bringing up the past, but the town has gotten in lease agreements and stuff that's all crazy and stuff. That low kind of money, I wouldn't want to see us getting another predicament on such a low amount of money. We've been paying more than a big one.
Which is why we're trying to set it up so that we have the ability to get out of it
Right,
very quickly and appropriately.
thank you.
Now,
So do you want that motion to go to allow us to research both the bond bank and the banks? Is that how we want that to be
I don't-
stated?
I don't think it needs to be stated that way.
Or just go by the request for Connor, let
Just-
him shop
I
for the
would-
best?
I would go by the request because, yeah, I would say let's go by the request because what we're really requesting is a motion to begin the financing process. It isn't approving
Right.
the bond,
Okay.
and whether it's a
My
local bond
misunderstanding.
or
All right.
a bond bank bond.
So I'll make that motion to begin the process.
So you're making a motion to begin the financial process for $875,000 bond approved process for the $875,000 bond approved by the voters in 2019 and use ARPA funds to reduce the amount needed to be bonded.
Correct.
Seconded by Select Person Mantrek. Roll call vote.
All right.
Mantrek, aye.
Bailey, aye.
It's a Koshai.
Nap aye. New business. Appointments of terms expiring in 2022, which we discussed largely under our appointments place. Is there any further discussion on that? Anything you looked at?
Nope, I just want to put the remaining select board members on notice, and this will be shared with the incoming select board members so they're aware of the decisions that will be need to be made in March. Excuse me, thank you.
Select Board reorganization. You folks will have to vote on a new chair at the next meeting. As well as I'd like to make sure that the folks who get elected come in and have packets that help walk them through use of the website, getting set up with their town email account and all the other relevant items, as well as some guidance on historical documents, historical information, things of that sort would be my suggestions for you folks.
And mailbox keys.
Could,
How many have you lost?
I haven't lost any.
could you remind me, do we, at our next meeting, would we then decide who would, or the assignments at that meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, and then.
That'd be on the
Not-
14th.
Yeah. That'll be the next.
No, so under agenda item number C, the letter C, the plan is that you'd decide who's chair going to be at the meeting on the 14th, and then you'd communicate to the chair so that they'd be prepared to make those assignments at the March 28th meeting.
Oh,
As a reminder to everybody there, for the planning board, the RSA suggests that we find one of the incoming of the two that's coming in to have the assignment to the planning board, so that they'll have 3 years to go. That's how the RSA is, so, just something else to discuss here.
Yep, so in support of that, in your packet is a listing of those boards, and committees that typically have select board. What day of the week they meet, what time they meet, and about how many times a year they meet. And so, yes, after the select board reorganizes on the 14th, it will be the responsibility of the incoming chair to make those appointments. And so after you know who the chair is going to be, you can start lobbying them for how you'd like to be appointed.
How come
Yeah.
my name is missing?
it might be useful.
Have you reapplied to the zoning board?
I have not been asked to reapply.
Oh,
I have one more year to go.
2022, your term expired in 2022.
Select person Manshek.
Uh, Could I suggest too that we kind of push hard, because there are going to be a couple of, there's the planning board meeting and I think the zoning board meeting before the 28th. So we'll have to have kind of, it would be useful if we kind of push on whoever's elected to,
Well,
That's why I was pushing that with the new members coming on board, that they are connected with quickly, their email is set up, and they're put in a state where they walk in and they can,
Their feet are wet.
Right.
yeah, they're not walking into,
5-day notice.
they're not shell shocked on day one.
no, exactly.
Oh, they'll be shell shocked.
Well,
There's a lot to know. But yes, we have a very complete orientation packet that can bring them up to speed. And based on their availability, we can be available.
I just want to make sure we ensure that we get as much of the fire hose down their throat as possible for that meeting. I also will offer my availability for anyone who needs me just to help with any transition or experience related items. If anyone's interested in taking it up.
Thank you.
Looking at the list on our, it looks like the dates between myself and Cheryl are mixed up because, anyway. All
You can
right.
double check your oath, but
Okay, I'll wait till you do that for me, please.
I think that's a good number.
You were fired.
Yeah, I was fired, yeah.
Oh, and it says we're waiting for additional appointments, applications for appointments to come in.
All right,
Maybe yours is on that list.
moving on. Are there any other items under the new business? We've talked about the expiring terms, the reorganization, and the committee assignments.
The one that we added.
Yes, conversation around allowing the fire department to utilize the compensation time policy that's approved for the police department.
And so just a brief introduction, and, I recognize Select Person Ayer mentioned at the beginning that it's his wish not to make a decision about this tonight. I guess what I'll say is that the goal of expanding this policy utilization to the fire department, in addition to the police department, like we discuss a lot, police and fire are the two departments where we need to backfill the shifts. We can't, when somebody needs to take time off, they're sick, vacation, we don't have the option to not backfill those positions always, especially overnight. And so it's really helpful from a scheduling standpoint to allow, in this case, we'll talk police department, if a police officer wants to backfill an overnight shift and take it as compensatory time, then the chief can give them that time off during the day where they might not need to backfill that position because the chief's there, the deputy chief's there, sergeants are there. Similarly, in the fire department, the night and weekends, you hear from the chief regularly, are the most difficult shifts to fill. And the chief does a very financially responsible job managing his department by frequently utilizing part-time staff to fill night and weekend shifts in order to avoid putting an undue burden on the town with overtime and overworking the full-time staff. As that becomes more and more difficult, the fire chief is looking for an option to do a similar thing as the police department and take and say if a full-time firefighter is willing to pick up a night or weekend shift and take that as compensatory time, the chief could then give them time off in a scheduling circumstance that would be more beneficial to the town. And so to Select Person Ayers' concern in the beginning, really the goal of this is to have a mutually beneficial arrangement where the town's able to save some money or some, save in backfilling shifts or overtime, but the employee is able to benefit because if they have a night or weekend available and they'd like, a shift off during the day, they're able to do that. And as the policy reads, it would require mutual agreement. The employee can't demand compensatory time for filling a shift, and the fire chief can't require that they take it as compensatory time for filling a shift. And so the goal is mutually beneficial and give the fire chief an additional level of flexibility in scheduling of his department to accomplish the goals of coverage.
So the general item that I had on it is one there, I believe there's a typo in it.
There are a couple. Compensatory time, not compensatory time.
Yeah, the compensatory time is one piece, and then the second part is under the proposed fire department area, it says 1 hour equals 1 and 1 hour compensatory time.
Yeah, so just 1 hour equals 1 hour. So there's an additional 1 and. It's a good catch.
Okay. So it's a straight 1 for 1.
Right.
Not one.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I'm like, if it's 1 for 1.5, how is that any different than
Exactly.
higher than paying somebody overtime for it? Because I don't know if it is. I understand the idea of doing the 1 for 1 and trading off the shift basically, and I don't think that's a bad option. I historically, I'm not a fan of comp time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a fan of it because what happens is it doesn't get accrued, it doesn't get managed and accrued in a legal way under within the method of timekeeping and accounting. And from a compensation and accounting end, what ends up happening is often it's done off to the side saying, oh, we'll keep it in this little book over here, and it loses its traceability, and it doesn't become allotted time within the allotted pay cycle.
Thank you.
Which ends up being a real problem because it's supposed to be, my understanding of it is all supposed to be used within the allotted pay cycle. And being we are on a 1 week pay cycle, it would mean it would be done under that 1 week system.
No, so yeah, I mean, that's not how the policy is written. The policy instead puts limits on how much can be accrued for the exact purpose that you're talking about. And you're not wrong. And historically, I understand that there was a comp time policy townwide, which for reasons that you described, problems in tracking, went away townwide. And I think narrowly focusing the discussion about specifically police and fire and the value add in those departments by having the availability is important. As far as the tracking, it's going to be a responsibility of the chief to, there's 3 full-time firefighters right now that would be eligible for this. And, I agree that it's important and it can't be something that would be ignored. And, I certainly trust the chief to keep track of it. Again, it's a situation that has mutual benefit on both sides of keeping track of it and on using the program.
So theoretically, I agree. The problem that I run into is I personally think it should be done in a more official capacity than just, like I said, on somebody's sketch pad or notepad somewhere. It should be accounted for in our official time and attendance process.
We can create a form.
And it should be accounted for with payroll and finance so that it's tracked appropriately that way.
Yeah, because my question was gonna be, does it meet the tax standards for, paying the tax on the hours being used?
And what we do in the police,
Federal,
oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
that's all right, I'm sorry, I coughed and pushed it in the middle.
What we do in the police department is we do track it in our electronic time and attendance program. So they put in the extra shift and they put in the notes that it's towards their comp time. I guess what the human resources administrator does not do is it's not her responsibility to track and maintain, and an officer asks, hey, how much comp time do I have? And she responds. All the records are there and they are backed up in that way. So if you want, we can do it the same way. We can have the notes included in electronic time and attendance. So that way they're in the electronic record, but they're also in the weekly payment record too.
Yeah,
We would.
like I said, this is a slippery slope.
We would find out that, over the course of the year would be the best way to do it, to monitor it that way there. It would at least eliminate 70% of the questions.
I mean, I do think it needs to be done with your human resources person. The Tracy Hardikoff side of me sitting here is like red flags going off left and right on this, because I know I went through some of this within my own work as well on comp time. The other piece is like the moment you crack the door, which was kind of done with police, now it transitions to fire, and then pretty soon it's like, well, the highway department, you know, is plowing roads and they want comp time. It opens this all back up.
So I'm asking you to consider the fire department tonight, and for a very specific reason that I hope you'll support. You know, I think if a future board is tasked with considering other policy changes, I mean, that's going to have to be what they do. There's no plan to look for comp time for any other department. This is a need that arose in the fire department. Fire chief and I got together to brainstorm ways to accomplish it. This was the proposal. This was the cream that floated to the top. From my standpoint, like I said, I think it's something that aims to save the town money and be mutually beneficial. And I understand the concerns about tracking it, and we'll certainly do whatever the board wishes. You know, there's an established process using electronic time and attendance, so I think it would be easy to do the same thing through the Human Resources Office. So, you know, we can certainly do that.
Discussion. Select person Sakosha.
So, I mean, I know there's a tough time keeping PD and FD and keeping those guys in circulation. You know, where I see those are the two services that the town are probably focused on the most, because we want to make sure that, you know, one, people are in check and safe, and two, also healthy, and, you know, their homes aren't on fire. So, I mean, I do see, you know, those two entities being the brunt of the two most important services in my eyes for the town. Because, you know, everybody's life matters, family, so on and so forth. But I'd like to see if Chief Walker would come up and, you know, if he's got something in place for you know, this is how we're going to track it and how it'll benefit the fire department. Chief, would you want to mention anything?
I would also mention that these are the two 24-hour-a-day required. I mean, these are 24 hours a day, 365 a year, leap year.
Twice on Sunday.
Thank you for considering this. For me, I think Administrator McIver pretty much nailed it. The fact that I'm viewing it more as a tool to ultimately save money, because at the end of the day, I mean, if we don't have this available, then it costs my department to have funds. Because I have all relatively new, I don't have a lot of print time built up. So to be able to be in a position to say, hey, this is mutually beneficial, you want to take a day off in 2 weeks to go do something that you're regularly scheduled for. This gives them the opportunity, at least in my eyes, if I need to fill a Saturday shift and say, well, you know, I got an open shift on Saturday, so if you want to take this Saturday shift and then in 2 weeks, the day that you're asking for off, which we're going to allow you to do anyway, but now I got to pay somebody time and a half. So, and I spoke to Connor about the fact that in my eyes, it should be, I view it to be a dual, meaning that I wouldn't just arbitrarily say it's okay to do this. I would sit down with the town administrator and say, look, this is what I want to do. I want to let Fred have a day, and he's going to cover this day. Kind of between the two of us, make sure that it is mutually beneficial. It isn't just me saying, yeah, we can do this. So again, I'm looking at more from allowing me to keep more money in my overtime budget so that when I do need to use it, it's available. And if I don't need to use it, give it back.
So did you have a plan for tracking the hours?
I fully expected that we do exactly what the way the police did, that we would keep track of it on paper. And, you know, there's a fair labor standards rule. And how I operate with my people is like when my people want a day off, they send me an email. I mean, literally, they come up to me and say, hey, can I have Friday off? Yep, send me an email. I reply to the email that I've approved that. And I look at that, that's beneficial to both of us because I'm getting older and sometimes I show up at work on Friday and go, where's Fred? And now I'm on the horn going, Fred, where are you? Well, Chief, you told me I could have that day off. So now I'm sitting there going, did he really ask? He's asking, did I ask the chief? So, you know, it's an internal policy we've done and it works well. Now there's an email and I hang on to email. So again, my assumption with comp time is that we would operate exact same vein. That's how it's handled.
No, what would be the disciplinary action if you did get Fred that just took off Friday and said, oh no, I sent you an email? How would we handle that?
So we'd handle that the way the town policy operates. So if I don't know right off the top of my head, but if they didn't show up for work, then I would go to the town administrator and say, okay, what's the process of somebody, how, whatever that's called.
Yeah,
Disciplinary process.
our personnel policy calls for progressive discipline. And so generally like a 3-strike rule, more or less.
Yeah, I just wanted to get it out there for
Yep.
everybody, so.
But yeah, no, it is progressive discipline. We track it. So, you know, within a time frame.
We're not, we can do, hope I'm not speaking a little out of turn. So if somebody does a little something and I say, hey, we weren't, and they get a verbal warning for it, but anything that goes from the warning requires that I go sit with it. Start, here's the issue I have with this employee and where do I go from here? So obviously we need to make sure that in some cases, human resources gets in the middle so that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So it's down the path, head down a path that nobody wants to go down, that we've done that. And, but I'll say this, I'm very fortunate. I have employees and in all the years I've been managing employees, I can tell you that with one hand, the number of times, and have fingers left over, the number of times somebody's called me at 5:30 in the morning and say, Chief, I'm sick and I can't come to work. And every single time they legitimately were sick. And I think I credit that to the fact that I'm a firm believer that when people earn their time and they earn vacation time, I'll bend over backwards to make sure they get their time, even if it means that I'm going to go in and cover their weekend shift or whatever day they want off, because I think it's that important to them. But I think the benefit for me is I'm not at 5 o'clock in the morning calling somebody and going, hey, Connor called up sick and now I need you to come to work. Or maybe you got plans for the day. So I think that system's worked well. And I think the employee appreciates the fact. I will do it in the time they need. And I view this, I don't see myself using this compensation policy a lot because the downside allowing compensation is that when, you know, in some cases, you're kicking the can down the road. When they decide on Friday that they want to use that now, maybe I'm gonna be stuck paying somebody overtime then anyway, so.
That was kind of my concern is somebody says, hey, I'll work an overnight. I'll do a 24-hour shift and pick up 16 hours of comp time. And then they do that twice in a week or something. And all of a sudden now they got 32 hours of comp time banked and they're like, hey, chief, I want 4 days off next week. And I'm going to work Monday and I'm off Tuesday through Friday.
But that's why the policy requires that the chief authorize when they're using that comp time. And so, and Jim brought up a great point, because there's already an established process for people requesting leave time and using leave time. And I think Chief Walker has built a lot of commitment from his employees by bending over backwards to make sure they get the time off that they want. But there's certainly limits.
So something else that might be a useful tool. I know the town uses SharePoint.
Mhm.
I actually have a SharePoint calendar set up because I have 3 different departments that report into me.
That's something you do on a computer.
Yeah, it's one of those things you do on the computer.
Yeah.
And what they do is you go onto the computer, you select your date off, and then
They didn't have this
then
300 years ago.
the really cool part is you actually approve it there and it time and date stamps when you approved their PTO.
We have an internal, yeah,
Might get whiskey.
I'm just
finger on the
thinking like you
mouse.
talked about sending an email, then you have the whole calendar with everybody right there in front of you and it's really.
and that makes perfect sense. I mean, the thing is I allow my people to swap shifts amongst them,
Mhm.
but they have to make every effort to do it in that same pay week. Now, obviously, sometimes something comes up where, you know, I come in today and realize that I have a chance to have Red Sox tickets for Sunday and it's Friday, and I go.
So they're not playing this season, so it's not gonna matter.
In some cases, we can't make the swap happen in that cycle because it happened too late in the week, but they understand going in that it has to happen in the very next pay cycle. And the reason for that is because I don't want these to drag on, because when you come to work for me tomorrow because I need the day off, you know, this is great for me and you've fulfilled your commitment. Now, 3 weeks from now, you go, hey, Rick, remember that day you owe me? Yeah. Well, I need you to do it tomorrow. Well, I'm not as enthused about review tomorrow because I've already gained what I wanted. So
Right.
sometimes that causes problems in the fire service. And I like to think that I look at what other departments have run into problems and say, okay. And so my people understand that it's a special exception happen in the pay week. And as I say, if you guys approve it, I appreciate it. It's another tool for myself and the town to make things work for us, but I don't see it happening a lot, because at the end of the day, in some cases, it's gonna be easier for me just to say, no, I'll just pay the time and a half now and be done.
Select person Bailey.
Yeah, how's that gonna work with the retirement at 40 hours?
So all of the chief's full-time employees now were not vested by 2011, which means, you know, they have their base compensation and their comp over base, and they don't earn New Hampshire retirement credit on their comp over base is what it's called.
Okay,
and-
thank you. Yep.
And the police chief's available. He texted me and said, if you're interested in hearing from him about comp time policy in the police department, he's available to speak to it if you're interested. Or need that.
Does anyone feel they need that, or is everybody?
Pretty good, but you know, depending on, I know what system you have works. I get it. I would just maybe consider, I don't know, I wouldn't want to, well, hold another board to stipulation, but say if you retire in the next 3-4 years, you know, Rick Walker had an excellent system. Doesn't mean that the next guy picking up the ball is going to be able to pick it up and run with it.
Right. Well, and that's why I think that's why I do think it's important that it's a select based.
We could always put a sunset clause in it.
Yeah, upon Chief Walker's retirement, you know,
Yeah, there
it's
you
up
go.
for review.
Right there.
I would encourage you maybe to set like a review date, not a,
Yeah.
not a sunset line, like review by,
What? I mean, it might be as early as like 2040, you know?
he's gonna win the lottery tomorrow.
As early as tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Be a good day.
So
Let's give it a year, right?
as I said, I guess my only concern on it is from the standpoint that I think everybody here, and nobody would probably disagree, that we all appreciate it, the way Rick does it and how he runs it. And it'll be great as long as Rick maybe is
Yeah.
there. It's when somebody transitions or turns over that you tend to see the wheels that come off the bus. And as Rick alluded to, the other department problems that people have that we currently don't have. I would prefer not to set somebody up to have those problems. So I would recommend that it's, usually I would give it a year or 2 years, like a policy review is done every couple of years. Hopefully you don't have, if you have to do it every year, it means you got something a little wonky.
Or with the new human resources administrator, we're, finally starting the process of the personnel policy review. So we just flagged this policy for review during that process, because this is something that would be implemented into the personnel policy anyways. So that I think would be a natural time to do it, and that's going to happen within the next year anyways, so.
Select person there.
Well, I'll bring up, I wasn't probably known as reviewing what I did and said, I'm not willing to make a vote on tonight. This night, it has some stuff unknown and stuff. And on long run, someone who works their butt off all this comp time, they got vacancies anyways, there'll be time and a half anyway, so I know it's a tool to help, but I think it'd come back and bite you in the butt. I live in a different world. I don't get earned time, I don't get comp time and stuff. And we've had issues with that in the past and stuff, and then put a future burden on the other selectmen, I can't do it.
Select person Mantrick.
I was gonna say, we probably need to review all of our pay policies. Now we have a human resources director as a separate thing. I suspect we should do that at least every 2 years, if not annually.
Yep.
And this would be part of that.
Bi-yearly or something.
Yep, I agree.
That'd be a killer.
I agree.
So if we were gonna do it, I'd make the motion to have a 1-year approval on it with a follow-up in a year with the human resources person having reviewed all the legal impacts to it, as well as the statute of how it would kind of renew if it were gonna be renewed by the board.
Just what it looks like.
Second,
Okay,
Yeah, I know, because I wasn't probably in time and fashion with information, too many unknowns.
thank you.
We have a motion?
Yes,
motion
I
and a
said I
second.
would make a motion based on that.
Bailey, aye.
Sakosha.
Nap aye.
Thank you.
So 1-year review, back before the select.
We're within a year during personnel policy.
Yep. Select board member reports.
Conservation canceled their last meeting. Town land. I'm still talking about that. That's all
Transfers committee voted to do Harding as our probably the most cost-effective way, and appreciated that the select board had made some commitment to that. They were concerned. School board meets tomorrow, and ABC has done meeting
Right, not until
till next
August.
September, or August, September, sometime since then.
Select person Bailey.
Thank you very much. We had, library had the meeting and, they just had the regular meeting coming up. I have to admit, I forgot some of the programs that are coming up in, June on forward. So there were the plant sales and what have you. And then we had the, ZBA. And it was with the, 2A tactical, and we had a good discussion and tough discussion, but that was approved 4-1. And so
I thought it was 3-2.
3-2, okay, 3-2. I thought it was 4-1, was 3-2, and I voted to approve it, but, so that's, the way that went. There was a lot of,
If you don't mind me asking, after all the conversation we've had, could I ask why? And you can tell me no, that's your choice, but
publicly, in front of this, I would say no to you, but I would discuss it with you afterwards, one-on-one with you afterwards, so it doesn't break any laws.
okay.
That's,
Mhm.
yeah, you look at two things, that's it, yeah.
Was a public meeting. It's fine.
Yes.
Yep.
Rec department, they're gonna be going on with their wall project that they have for getting that done at the rec. Check out the website for information as far as camps coming up, all that's online. But yeah, not too much going on at the rec.
Good deal. So planning board meeting tomorrow. Besides that, we haven't had no technology committee meeting, nothing new.
Yeah, the 15th, you won't be there
I
for
won't.
it?
I am history, as they say. I would like to officially turn in my mailbox key.
Is this the key to the town?
That's the one right there. Show all the answers.
That's awful one. That's probably the one that works on the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, as I finish up, thank you to everybody that has made this journey so adventurous for the last 6 years. I will challenge you all to make the hard decisions. The yes decisions are easy. It's the decisions where you have to sit here and look the public in the face and say, no, that's not in the best interest of all of our residents. And I will challenge you folks to make those decisions, the three of you, as you continue to sit here. So thank you for my time served and my position as the chairman of the board here. Multiple years in tow. So thank you and
Thanks for
good
your
night.
service.
I appreciate the time you put in, not only as chair, but also the time you put in the planning board. And again, Mr. Knapp, I would really say that you brought a lot to this town, and I hope everybody appreciates it as much as I do. Thank you.
Final public comment.
You too.
If you're participating virtually and you'd like to make a public comment, this will be your last chance tonight.
Coming up for.
You can do so by
Oh.
raising your hand. We have 30 in person.
I just want to say thank you to Dan and Andy both for your time on the board. I didn't always agree with all of your decisions, but I don't agree with everybody's decisions, and that's okay. I know the amount of work it takes to do what you folks have done, and you know, whether I agree with the decisions you made or not, I want to believe in my heart that both of you made decisions on what you thought was best for the entire town, and nobody can ever ask for any more than that. That, you know, that there's a reason there's 5 of you up there, and you know, sometimes you lose a vote 4-1, and sometimes you win it 4-1, and that's okay. But you know, I do appreciate everything you did. And to the 3 of you that are left, if you listen to the candidates forum on both the selectmen and the school board, I'm a huge proponent of a combined budget committee. Years ago, we had one. The problem was it was just people appointed by the town, so the school went out on their own. But I'm a firm believer, and I really would like to see the 2 boards sit down, get together, appoint a 6-person budget committee, 3 from the school board, 3 from the town, because I think it's important to sit down and look at the big picture. There's a lot of money there, and it doesn't serve anybody any good to sit there and say, well, it's that piece of the pie, it's this piece of the pie. It comes out of our pockets. And if the 6 people can sit down and take a hard look at the total budget, the number of warrant articles we got, what the impact's going to be down the road to whether it's highway, fire and police, or added kids in the school, that's all good information. That's information that them 6 people should be looking at and making decisions to say, hey, you know, if down the road we have to add on to a school or build a school, or we gotta do something, well, we shouldn't be doing that at the same time we're gonna buy 3 fire trucks. So I think that I would like to see the 2 boards get together. That's a goal of mine, to see the 3 boards the 2 boards get together and put a combined budget committee that can look out for all of them. I'll charge the 3 of you with that task.
May I ask a question?
Sure, what would you like me to answer?
No, not you. I want to ask, are you talking about an advisory or?
Yes, no, an open advisory, but
Okay,
I would like them 6 people to come back to this side in the school with a comprehensive idea. And no, I have no desire to be one of 6 people. Thank you.
That's a Rick. I already am opposed.
so we'll appoint him.
Again, if you're participating virtually and you'd like to make a public comment, this is your last chance. You can raise your hand. If you're participating on a phone, you might need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Speak up, wait to be recognized by the chair. Not seeing anything come through on this end, Mr. Chair.
No final chance to crucify me here. This is it.
It's all probably blocked up, you know,
All
it's
right.
just so busy.
Yeah,
everybody
right, yeah,
trying
there's a
to-
lot of infighting right now.
It's all bleak.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm closing public comment at this time. And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn since we have no non-public. Motioned by Select Person Manstrek, seconded by Select Person Bailey. Roll call vote.
Trick eye?
I didn't get a hold, a wait, and abstain, nothing. I'll vote no.
His last vote as select board members,
Yep.
no. Noted.
No.
Thank you,
Aye.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Really,